So, a few days ago, I made a video entitled Why You Should Not Compare Yourself to Chris, because outside of the notion that there are much better people to aspire to be or to learn from example, what sort of examples can we say we've learned from Chris in which we should not be like him? There's too many examples of note, and from my knowledge, ladies and gentlemen, it's just, at the end of the day, it's probably not worth it. But let's change the subject, change it around just a little bit, because believe it or not, and I will probably come across as very, very stupid for saying this, but let's think about this in logical terms. Is maybe there's something to be envious about with Chris? I generally don't even know where to begin with the problems with this, but, well, the problems come thick and fast when, well, you realise that Chris has probably stated on multiple occasions that even he doesn't like the life he lives, because he keeps going on about, among many other things, I should say, that he feels isolated, that he wants to talk to people, that he's sort of a little bit in his own little world, confined to the fact that he has no way to fathom just how bad his situation is when other people tell him exactly what his faults are, what his evils are, and what things go wrong in his life. He just decides to, put his blinders on and pretend he doesn't want to hear it. That's probably one of the reasons why it's probably, for reasons that have been made clear, is why it's probably not even a good idea to even consider yourself jealous of Chris, because, well, if you think your life is bad at the moment, imagine probably what Chris probably must have felt through periods of isolation, knowing the fact that even before he maced a GameStop employee, his life was basically going nowhere 10 years ago. But once again, let's think about it in every other aspect. Chris has never had to work as far as people like you and I do, and yet he still has a roof over his head. He still gets fed fairly consistently. His pattern for the day usually consists of doing live streams and playing video games. Whenever he's decidedly to not bother to tackling the paid commissions for his solitude comic, of which he actually gets paid for. So, when you look at it like that, ladies and gentlemen, you might say, well, what exactly have we got to feel bad for Chris for? What exactly are we going to be envious of the fact that Chris, absolutely by his own right, and probably even by his own admission, he could be doing so much better, and he could be setting something of an example. But I'm not so much focused on the fact about what we know fine well Chris should have done or not have done. But let's think of it also like this. What hope, and I mean seriously in the nicest way possible, what hope does Chris have when even the people who tell him where he's going wrong, they don't really Chris doesn't really seem bothered about actually getting some results or getting people to call back and saying, thank you so much for the advice. Here's a good way of like prophesizing this, is that when I was, oh god, where do I even begin with this? When I was first doing my bunch of videos on my weight loss, I showcased my mass gainer powder, and people went off immediately saying that this is not the right way to do it, and basically you're just going to be putting on unnecessary calories as maintenance, and you are going to regret it like almost instantaneously, because all you're doing is just getting fatter if you do that sort of thing. And once that was settled, and I've stopped taking mass gainer for basically a whole week at this point, and I've lost on average a pound a day, which, well, to be honest, there's probably quite a lot more to lose. But it's also the intriguing factor when, for some strange reason, it seems as though it's not only working, but it's the fact that actually this is just an example of me taking advice and knowing it's not meant to criticize me. It's just to point out where I was going wrong and what I could be doing better to improve my my state of being. That's exactly what it was for, and I'm very, very thankful for all this. And I let them know that I was extremely thankful for this. So when we go through that as well, let's just consider the fact that, again, it may even come down to the fact that Chris is not grateful for the advice and the help he gets. Because I don't really think that Chris knows how to express his gratitude, or Chris, because I'm not entirely sure I really fit into the conspiracy or the idea that Chris is malicious and he wouldn't say thank you even if somebody basically turned his life around forever for the better. I believe it's just a matter of the fact that Chris doesn't see the appreciation. He doesn't see the value in when people help him out in that way. As far as, let's say, the financial crisis was concerned, the only value Chris saw any value in is whenever he got paid for all the toys he sold, or if people just straight up just gave him money expecting absolutely nothing in return for it. There's a routine pattern when it comes to a lot of Chris's identity, and a lot of this fits into perhaps Chris's imaginations when it comes to money, is that Chris, for whatever some very strange reason, whenever he gets himself into situations and he's on the brink of madness, Chris, at no point does it ever, because these things do happen again regularly and time again, it never once occurred to Chris that, you know what, he should be familiar to to this dance. He should be familiar to these sorts of routines. He should be familiar to the fact that he knows fine well what happened the last time when he didn't listen, and look at all of this. I mean, it's when people warned him about Blue Spike. They told Chris exactly who Blue Spike was, and Chris just chose to ignore them. Chris was told absolutely what would happen if he was just going to engage the trolls head on, in spite of all the things that Chris had said and put on the internet before that point, before the subsequent information overload, as he put it. Then, when we are going to... how did I start this video again? Oh yeah, by saying that whether or not we should be envious of Chris. Well, unfortunately, I'm just going to sort of like close out this video by saying this. No. To be honest, I don't think we should be envious of Chris. I'm not saying we can't be envious at times, but sometimes there are other things, there are other factors. I mean, how many of us would love to be paid by other people and by the federal government for doing absolutely nothing with our days? It would make you wonder why it would be even worth getting out of bed at all. You know what? My bed is made, but I'm not going to lie in it. Hey, you know what? Because people, like, when you get into that mentality, it gives you the impression that you feel entitled to it. And that is the single core value I think Chris at times showcases in his body, is that he thinks he is a person deserving, not a person who's actually worked or is going to be rewarded. He doesn't really I don't think Chris really believes in the concept of rewards. Chris believes in the concept of validation and entitlement. He believes he is entitled to what he gets, and he feels that he is obliged to get it because of who he is and what he does. But again, why bother? Who would go out of their way to idolize Chris as sort of like a figure of virtue, of empowerment, or a figure of great decision making, or just somebody in general who is both great who is pleasant and approachable on the internet as well as off it? who exactly is going to be looking towards Chris and say, you know what, that's the sort of person we should all aspire to be? Unfortunately, and it pains me to say this, Chris is not that guy. I know deep down probably Chris thinks he is, but unfortunately Chris is not that guy. And why this all pains me to say, ladies and gentlemen, is a bit curious because, well, when you put it like that, and maybe this is how I was always going to end this video anyway, when you put it like that, there's not really that much to be envious about Chris about. And I think that's absolutely fine. It's not a contest about saying, once again, whether you are better or worse than Chris. I think that has been rightfully explained in the You Shouldn't Compare Yourself to Chris video. But I will say this, is that sometimes you do feel as if like life is a little bit hard, and sometimes things don't happen for the best. And that you get weighed down by the stresses of life, whether it's low on money, the price of things keeps rising, and you feel unfulfilled or perhaps even lost about where you're going in life. But that doesn't stop anybody. It never stops anybody from trying, because at the end of the day, that's just about the only thing we really can do when you think about it. At least we can try. We can try and learn from the past, from things that have happened. Which, yes, I know I'm quoting He-Man, but you know what? Fair is fair. I think that's a pretty good philosophy. So, yeah, I wish there was literally anything more I could say to it than that, but I think that's just about everything. So, I hope all of you guys have learned something out of this, and I cannot wait to talk to you guys again in the next video. Take care, and bye-bye for now.